We are ready when you are.
Okay. So the title of our project is The Effects of ISIS and Warfare on Iraq.
So Iraq, according to history.com, Iraq gained their independence in 1920 from the Ottoman Empire and the British. Its country is centrally located in the Middle East, bordered by countries like Syria and Iran. Okay, why does Iraq matter? Currently, we are primarily dependent on oil manufacturers in 5 countries, one being Iraq. Over 263 million out of the 329.7 million people in the United States have automobiles that operate on oil. And oil also serves as an important world economy.
Okay, so who is ISIS? ISIS is an extremist group that inflicts harm upon many countries in the Middle East, and it originated in 2004. So our team question was, how do ISIS and warfare affect Iraq?
So, economical damages due to the account of ISIS inflicting violence on Iraq.
The wars in Iraq have caused detrimental damage to the environment due to radioactive contamination, intentional crop fires, and polluted freshwater sources.
Iraq forces students to learn about the terrorist dues and bomb schools to use as camps.
And ISIS and warfare cause children to suffer from health problems, physical and mental.
Okay, so this is the economical aspect on how ISIS has caused damage upon Iraq's economy. My claim is primarily a conclusion that I created with the amount of information that was acquired when conducting my individual research paper. I found that many oil manufacturers and produce were under ISIS's control, which led them to accumulate a large sum of money. According to ABC News, around $1 million ISIS has accumulated in Iraq alone from oil. And according to a paper called The Islamic State Comes to Town, ISIS has plundered through Mosul banks and accumulated over $400 million. And this claim leads to, like, what does this lead for the people? What do the people have left? And essentially, the people don't have anything. Because if you take their jobs away, you take their money away, it leaves nothing for the people. And many of these people have to relocate. They have to go into move to like urban cities within the country, and they have to live in shacks which are made by like old metal built up and stacked up on top of each other.
So, over the years, Iraq has been faced with a bunch of damages to its environment, and one of the main causes of it is radioactive contamination, which is a chemical that is used for like trying to explode like army tanks and stuff. And so, radio contamination has been found over more than 40 sites across Iraq, and scrap sites remain in great concern because it's open for like children and scavengers to just roam around, and it could potentially harm them. And depleted uranium is considered the most effective warhead for penetrating the enemy tanks, and inhaling this chemical can cause lung cancer and kidney damage. And that is caused because the wind transports the dust all over. The uranium has made its way into the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, which are Iraq's main water sources, and Iraqi fish are the most endangered species in the country. They have been found floating in the waters due to the polluted sources because of the chemicals making its way into the water. And then the mass death of fish have caused significant losses to fish farms, and they have been banned due to the chemicals getting into like the fish and causing people to get sick, which has caused fishermen to be out of work. Intentional crop fires have been set by those fighting in wars to destroy and scare off the people that they are fighting with, and this has caused wheat and cotton to burn, and now farmers can't make a living for themselves to sell them to the people, and now the fires have threatened the homes of the citizens, and over 74,000 acres were burned, and everyone in Iraq is now suffering. So the back-to-back warfare in Iraq has not given the environment and ecosystem enough time to replenish itself. So now animals populations are decreasing and wildlife sightings are very rare now. And Iraqi citizens can't make a living because of all of their destroyed resources. And there are no sources of fresh water, so people risk getting disease every day.
The presence of ISIS and warfare in Iraq caused many health problems in children. Many of these problems come from ISIS recruiting children, and another way that children are affected by ISIS and warfare is that there's a lack of education and normal life opportunities for children. Some of the most common health problems that children face now are anxiety, depression, PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, and malnutrition. ISIS uses brutal methods to recruit children. Researchers from the Center for Peace Studies at McMaster University say that all children need care, attention, and empathy, which there is a lack of due to the deaths of many parents and parents' prioritization of safety over care. Also due to the large amount of involvement of children in ISIS and other groups, children are more exposed to child labor, recruitment by ISIS, abuse, and early marriage. And the presence of ISIS and war also leads to unsafe neighborhoods, which means that children can't play outside and interact with each other. ISIS uses these brutal methods to recruit children. They physically torture them. ISIS uses brutal methods to recruit children. They physically torture them by forcing them to undergo intense physical training, and they harm them if they refuse to join or if they fight back. In an interview by the PBS Frontline newspaper, a 14-year-old boy told his story about escaping the ISIS recruiters, and they said that because he refused to join, the recruiters cut off one of his hands and one of his feet, which left him permanently harmed. Also, ISIS recruiters make threats towards the parents of children that they want to recruit, which further forces them to join ISIS. And they force them to watch videos of other younger children completing suicide missions and undergoing the training. Okay. These factors are what leads to health problems in children, such as anxiety, malnutrition, depression, PTSD, behavioral problems, low IQs, and malnutrition. These problems would take many years to solve, but researchers have come up with a couple solutions, including rehabilitation efforts for children that are escaping ISIS, including children's interest in peace agreements with Iraq, implementing an international humanitarian law about the protection of children in countries at war, and donating to organizations that are bringing medical supplies and food to Iraq.
Okay, ISIS and children's education. ISIS has bombed multiple schools and libraries and set up camp with them, and along with traps. These traps can include bear traps, tripwires, all that unhumane stuff. So certain specialists have to come in and rid of these traps for possible reconstruction of these schools and libraries. They have also forced teachers and students to teach and learn about religious extremism and violence. Most of this, they would usually cancel out the addition sign in math problems because it too heavily resembled the Christian cross, and they would ask the kids to calculate how many unbelievers can be killed with a single suicide bomber. And they also, because of parents' past affiliation with ISIS, they weren't able to get any really legal civil documents. So they didn't have anything like death certificates, birth certificates, marriage certificates, and they were not able to legally register their children into any government school that would provide them with good education. And this has caused some of the children that the parents were affiliated with ISIS to undergo some type of discrimination from other kids. And this overall has generated, generated parents' fear into letting their kids go to schools because they fear that ISIS will eventually get to them and try to turn them into, what Michael said, like children's soldiers.
Right, so our conclusion is that ISIS and warfare in Iraq has caused health problems in children,
Detrimental damage to the environment.
An economic deficit.
And a corrupt educational system.
Thank you. Good job. I have some questions for these presenters. My first question is for Micah. How did your team go about developing the research question?
So when we first started the process of making our presentation, we looked at the individual lenses, so the scientific and social, economic, historical, environmental. And then when we researched into those, we realized that the main thing that was causing these individual problems was the presence of ISIS and warfare in Iraq. So when we formed our team question, we focused it on how ISIS and warfare affect Iraq.
Thank you. My next question is for Amaris. What information did you learn about the topic that you had been unaware of, and why is that information significant?
Well, for my part of it with education, I looked up that some schools in Iraq don't have enough money to financially support their schools, so they don't have any bathrooms, electricity, textbooks. And the money they do have come from parents, and they were only able to raise about 5,000 dinars, which in equivalent is $4 US. And I kind of tied this into the bombings that can happen at schools. So if a bombing were to occur, they wouldn't be able to probably build it back up because of such little money they have.
Thank you. My next question is for Tahara. How did your own views about this problem or issue change as a result of evidence that was brought in from the rest of your team?
So my views essentially didn't change. It really just added on to what I already knew and really wrapped up what I already knew. So like Micah, for instance, prior to doing our presentation, I had researched things about children. So some of the things I knew, like we read interviews upon interviews about like children body parts being cut off and seeing their parents die right in front of them. So it's devastating and it's horrible, but I already knew that, so it just added on. And with Sahara, her environmental lens, knowing that the water isn't clean and infrastructure being damaged, it really just added on to what I already know.
Thank you. And my last question is for Sahara. Describe the thought processes as you prepared to deliver this argument to an audience. Which points did you want to be sure were emphasized in this presentation?
I wanted to emphasize that the wars, even though they're affecting the environment mostly, they're also affecting like the people and the citizens living in Iraq, because since like the fires, they're burning their houses and removing everything that they worked for throughout their lives. And now that there's a lack of resources already, they can't build up what they already had, and then they're just put into poverty. So I just wanted to emphasize that a little bit.
Thank you very much. Yay! And our battery